Hi, everyone. This is the latest episode of the Michael and Rusty Show. I'm Rusty Harrison. Today I'm joined by Michael Willoughby, and we're going to be talking about two events that happened recently. One that has a lot of implications in terms of sports and entertainment, with the announced retirement of WWE Chairman Vince McMahon, as well as a recent baseball game which set many records for the Toronto Blue Jays and the Boston Red Sox, who suffered the loss in a blowout game on Friday, July 22nd, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But first, I'd like to have Michael lead the discussion on the events leading up to Vince McMahon's announced retirement, and we'll talk about that event. Some people might not consider it true sport, but certainly many personalities in the WWE, particularly from football, have had connections in the past with the product, and we can discuss it today in that context. So, Michael, hi.
Hey, Uncle Russ.
So let's talk about this. Give me some feedback in terms of what's led up to McMahon's announced retirement.
Well, Vince McMahon has been under scrutiny by the owned company board of directors as well as the stakeholders. It's in regards to the allegations of covering up an earlier deal between himself and along with John Laurinaitis, who was the executive vice president. These two delivered hush money to a former employee of the WWE, and it wasn't revealed until this very recently, I think back in the spring, when these allegations first came. And at that time, when it was first surfaced, Vince McMahon stepped aside as CEO, but he was still being the head of creative for the WWE. Late Laurinaitis took a leave of absence, and yeah, it was a very bizarre situation. Stephanie McMahon took over as interim CEO at the time, which is now since Vince McMahon, with the new allegations that come out, the new recent reports come out last week, I should say, that was accused of something I can't recall at this point, but it was very damaging to say the least. And McMahon decided to retire within a week before WWE's first big event post WrestleMania, and that is SummerSlam.
Okay, what I understand is that there have been a series of hush money agreements that McMahon has entered into with women regarding sexual relationships that he did not obviously want to have publicly disclosed. And so in each case, he paid these women. I think it's up to 4 that's come public. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so this is something that obviously has a great deal of implications if, in fact, it can be shown that McMahon was using company funds instead of his own to make these payments. Can you tell me about the recent product in the WWE and why there was a sense that Vince was going to leave eventually? And how has this announcement affected the current and future prospects for the Federation?
Well, the WWE with Vince McMahon in the last few years has plummeted considerably, with talent going getting cut or getting fired. The adjustment of policies by McMahon and the creative team. You've seen the shows Raw, SmackDown, NXT. NXT, which is the fetus brand of the WWE, is getting a lot of attention over the last several years. And Triple H was known as, in business terms now, was Paul Levesque. He was the head of NXT, and I guess McMahon had the jealousy. We do not know what was the definitive cause of McMahon excluding Triple H, but Triple H was having a lot of success, and I think McMahon decided to make a adjustment turn, trying to save face of the company, and that move, and along with other moves, I just think the WWE programming has gone stale. I've been a part of a couple of wrestling groups online and on Facebook. Namely, one is RGW. It's an interactive wrestling group, and we will talk about things about WWE, AEW, TNA, all the other wrestling promotions of interest. And we will very much compounding the fact about Vince McMahon almost every single week of how the creative decided to go different routes and stuff against the fans. And yeah, it's just it's been stale for the last several years, pretty much ever since the turning point, the Ruthless Aggression era, which started from 2002 to 2018-19, and a concurrent junction with the PG era, which has not been 100% great. So, yeah, it's just the overall talent. I can say WWE is, they could bring several people back now with Triple H as the head of creative. Bruce Pritchard has been let go. From what I know, Laurinaitis has been canned. From what I know.
Yeah.
Stephanie McMahon, along with Nick Khan, are now co-CEOs. So it should be based on the reaction from other talents in the past that is taken online, and current talents in the WWE. They've already praised the idea of having Stephanie McMahon as being the head and Triple H being the head of creative. It's nothing but good marks so far, but keep in mind the programming, the storylines are going to have to come to an end that's tied from Vince McMahon's last week's
right
at the helm of creative. It will probably culminate at SummerSlam, and it's not going to change overnight. I think it will take weeks to months to get it together, but I think you will see a whole different product, and you'll see a lot better attitude, a healthier attitude, I should say, of the whole company going forward with Stephanie McMahon as this co-CEO and Triple H, Paul Levesque, as the head of creative talent.
Yeah, I as I've talked to you before, I used to follow professional wrestling a lot. Basically, the whole Chris Benoit tragedy, in fact, his murdering of his wife and his child, and then his subsequent suicide, that really turned me off of wrestling for quite a while, just that whole episode. But what I was just wondering was, like, I've heard that Triple H had a major heart issue. He actually had to have surgery, and that was the precipitating factor for him to leave. Whether I haven't heard anything about McMahon pushing him out, or what the context might be behind the scenes, but I always suspected that Stephanie was going to be, at least in terms of the business side of the company, be the front-facing representative, and that Triple H, because In fact, he has a really incredible history with the company as a performer, would in fact be the driving force behind the creative. And so that doesn't surprise me too much. You were talking about the way AEW has developed in recent years. My take has been that it's been a boon for the performers themselves, because they're able now to have a competitor to jump to if necessary, because for many years the WWE was basically a monopoly. What I want to check with you is, do you see there being a power shift in WWE? Do you see them possibly being sold to Disney or some other major corporation in light of what's happened with McMahon, that the family may choose to pivot out of the direct control of the product?
Well, you got to keep in mind, even though Vince McMahon is no longer the CEO and chairman of the board, he is, and also the head of creative talent. Vince McMahon is the majority stakeholder of the WWE. He is still, as of this recording, he is the majority stakeholder. So he will be like the major financier, just like what Shad Khan is to AEW. Because Shad Khan is the majority stakeholder. He's like the business finance guy. But his son, Tony, I believe is Tony Khan, made the executive decisions of AEW. As regards to a power shift of the WWE, we're just going to wait and see how well the product is going to be under Stephanie McMahon Helmsley or Stephanie McMahon Levesque, and Paul Levesque reign the controls, most of the controls, because you want to have the stakeholders the shareholders wants to have see a really good product out of the WWE with this change, because this is a very monumental change after nearly 40 years in the ownership of Vince McMahon, and you cannot expect to see changes overnight and to blossom. It's going to take time, and I think the first measuring stick test would be the litmus test would be the SummerSlam event that is coming up this coming Saturday, because that will be the first aha moment of McMahon and Levesque. Or we could see in the next coming months, if the stakeholders are not as felt very confident with the WWE, I think the WWE will probably concede the fact that they need to sell its majority shares to Disney or whoever is competing with the WWE, because it's not a trial by error. This is basically the one last gasp of the McMahon dynasty going on right now, and if this does not change until like in WrestleMania, the ratings do not improve, or let alone beat AEW consistently. The thing is, WWE may have to concede operations and hand it ownership to like Disney or any other major company they want to take a shot at the WWE.
So we have a situation with the WWE where I think what you were saying is absolutely true in terms of the product, but where I think that we have to consider that the WWE itself, in terms of the current contracts that it has with Fox, with USA, is it? For the other network?
Yeah, Fox and USA.
So it's like NBC Universal, right?
Yeah, the Peacock is the
Oh,
carries the stream service of the WWE network.
Peacock, yes. Like my understanding is that they're locked in for years, and there's going to be no shortage of money coming into the product, like coming into the WWE. It's not an issue of them going out of business, but it is a question of viability long term. If the product doesn't get new viewers, particularly among young people, which is what, of course, advertisers always look to that demographic, 18 to 35, people with disposable income. My understanding has been that the WWE has had for many years a problem with the aging of their fan base as a whole. So you have people that are even like my age. I'm going to be 57 soon. So you have people who are my age watching the product, and they're not relating as much to a younger crowd that would actually have the kind of demographic appeal for marketing that advertisers are looking for. So that, I think that's a big consideration. AEW seems to me to be a more in tune with trying different things, being more spontaneous, even in terms of just from what I see, because again, I'm not following it religiously, but for example, they don't script the promos that the wrestlers do to the degree that they do in the WWE. In WWE, I see no wrestler having free reign to speak on a particular topic. So they do sound like, they have a few writers that write for these people. And so it sounds just like three different voices for all the different characters in the performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an issue. That's an issue, definitely. What do you think is going to be the effect in the next few months in terms of what we'll see directly on the Raw and SmackDown shows?
I think it's going to be, if you have seen NXT years for the last few years before the NXT 2.0 thing came along, the product in the NXT was great and was run by Paul Levesque. If you can see that in the WWE, both Raw and SmackDown, I could see a lot more talent will be using non-scripted. It would be more better promos and better engagement, because there's no better promo talker in the WWE in the last generation than Triple H. He's one of the great mic workers in his time. So I think a lot of young talent in the WWE will be benefiting and getting a boost from Triple H conversing during a promo. And what's also important to know is announcers and play-by-play, most namely Michael Cole, who's doing SmackDown. He is the lead announcer of the WWE for a long, long time, surpassing Jim Ross, who is now in AEW. All the time in the programs, either Raw, SmackDown, or even pay-per-views like WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, the commentating from Michael Cole was discussed, communicated over with Vince McMahon in the ear. So he had
direct communication.
Yeah, direct communication. It's between Michael Cole and Vince McMahon, and there has been issues in the past that Vince McMahon has been harsh on Michael Cole and it ring on the ear, and it affected Michael Cole's announcing ability.
Yeah.
And I know it for a fact that I've been going to be watching wrestling for 20 years this November. Michael Cole has been one of the very best when it comes to major moments, calling major matches. But he's always been a very skewish commentator at times as well, like too over the top. But this is because of his instant communication with Vince McMahon. And now it's going to be interesting to see how Triple H is going to do it with Michael Cole. Because
I look at it again as someone who's, getting some coverage of wrestling over YouTube because I don't watch the programming regularly. And just the sense that I get from what people are talking about, that you have a situation where, Michael Cole has to use the particular verbiage that Vince McMahon wants them to use. The example of rather than calling the fans, he wants the announcers to call them the WWE Universe.
mm-hmm.
The championship belts are not called like the physical thing that they wear to the ring to indicate that they're the lead, the lead wrestler in a particular section. They can't even refer to the physical thing because Vince McMahon has this association of it with regional territories of yesteryear. But in fact, any sport that is a contact sport that has a championship, you have something that people can look at that signifies that you're the champion. And in boxing and in wrestling, traditionally it's been a belt. So that's, these are just examples of things that, he has a particular way or had a particular way of trying to force commentators to speak in a way that is not natural to them, which I don't understand. You let the announcer announce, you let the person speak in their own voice and get into the emotion of the moment and not try to censor them or put pressure on them to speak your way. So, that what you're saying is quite accurate with Michael Cole from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just one more added to about Vince. You can criticize whatever incident that he has been part on, like the Owen Hart tragedy and the Chris Benoit situation and the Eddie Guerrero passing, the way that WWE has handled it and all these things. But you cannot deny Vince McMahon being one of the, if not the best wrestling promoter in the world, right, in the generation, if not ever. But you got to make a conversation.
I would say ever.
Yeah, you got to make it conversations with Jim Crockett. Those of you who are fans of the United States, following the territories like Jim Crockett and Vern Gagne, amongst others, it's even Stu Hart out west. It's Stampede Wrestling. There's a lot of great wrestling promoters, but everybody would remember, including my generation, Vince McMahon as the lead promoter in all professional wrestling.
He made it global. I mean, growing up, I always felt that Ric Flair was the greatest wrestler that I had ever seen. But you can't argue with the fact that through his use of cable television and the production quality of the WWE, then it was known as the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, that, he made it mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And WrestleMania is one of the big entertainment spectacles every year on the American entertainment calendar. And that is something that Vince McMahon had a tremendous role in promoting.
It's just think about Vince McMahon with WrestleMania, because if the WrestleMania did not go well in '85, I think it was 1985. It was
Yes.
the first WrestleMania. If that did not go as planned, if they don't have a strong ratings, I don't think the WWF would have existed.
Well, the thing was that he was locked in his purchase agreement with the existing owners to basically give the share of the future profits to pay off the purchase agreement, because he didn't have the money himself. And so he was absolutely against the wall when it came to WrestleMania 1 and the need for it to succeed. And it did. It exploded.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was able to parlay that into purchasing the World Wrestling Federation. His father, of course, was the main driving force behind it. But, you know, you can see the legacy that he built in terms of the product. But by the same token, what's happened recently, particularly in this situation, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes down with the, you know, with the talent, you know, the state of the workplace, how wrestlers can, you know, control their likenesses and their basically their intellectual property off of WWE, you know, shows and other media, because in fact that's been a big issue with wrestlers that have had Twitch streams and other avenues of potential income taken away from them because of WWE's practices. So how that changes under Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's ascension to the chairmanship, you know, that remains to be seen. So let's move on. So next we'll move on to a recent game that was notable in Major League Baseball between the Toronto Blue Jays and Boston Red Sox. I have to say it was one of the biggest blowouts I've ever seen, and I've followed baseball for over 40 years now. And I caught most of the game live on TV, but I also went back to watch it later. And it was astounding. It was an amazing game, just from a recent record standpoint. So I just want to take a minute or two just to talk about the main highlights, and then get to Michael's thoughts about what he witnessed as well, and talk about our experiences in watching baseball and try to compare them to other games and other times. So on Friday night, July 22nd, in Fenway Park in Boston, the Blue Jays defeated the Boston Red Sox 28-5. That's not a football score. Ironically, Tom Brady was tweeting during the game, and I believe when the score was 25-3 for the Blue Jays, he mentioned in a tweet to, I think it was Julian Edelman, the former receiver of the Patriots, that, you know, 25-3 is a very dangerous lead. Being reminiscent of course, the comeback that the Patriots made in a recent Super Bowl against Atlanta. But this game was unprecedented for the Blue Jays. It set a franchise record for most runs by the team. And it also set a record for the most runs ever given up by Boston. According to Baseball Reference, it was the 5th most runs scored by a team since 1901. The modern record still belongs to Texas, who beat the Baltimore Orioles 30-3 on August 22nd, 2007. So the Blue Jays came very close to setting a new record. Of note was the 5th inning, where Toronto scored 11 runs. And as I recall, there were many of those runs. The vast majority of them, in fact, happened when it was 2 outs in the inning. So that was exceptional. It's something that every time you see a game like this, you just wonder, like, you have to think back, have you ever seen anything like it? Well, I think I have, but not really to that extent in my memory. So very quickly, in each of the first 6 innings, the Jays scored runs. They had 7 in the 3rd, 4 in the 4th, and 11 in the 5th. Raimel Tapia, the center fielder for the Jays, had 6 RBIs, and Lourdes Gurriel, the left fielder, he had 5. The Jays also had 5 home runs for that game. So, of special note for me, because I vaguely remember this happening in a game, but if you had me at gunpoint, I don't think I could remember exactly when it happened, but I think I've witnessed something like this, but not to the degree. Tapia scored he hit a home run, but it was an inside the park home run, a grand slam in the 3rd inning. So he hit the ball to center field, and the center fielder for Boston, Jaron Duran, lost it in the lights. Mm-hmm. And he didn't react to the fact, okay, well, the ball obviously is over my head. I have to run and try to find it. He really just stood there like deer in the headlights. And by the time he reacted, Tapia was in fact circling second, and he was waved home by the third base coach. So that was incredible. That's one of those things that you just don't see every day. So Toronto got 29 hits for that game. They had 29 hits. And I think that's the most since 1992. Or I think it was the 2007 Rangers game that also had 29 hits. But there hasn't been more than 29 hits in many, many years. Finally, just to put this in context, the Red Sox, this was the 3rd blowout game in a row that they had. They lost 14-1 to the Yankees before the All-Star game. They also lost again 13-2 to the Yankees before the All-Star game. They had the All-Star break, and then you had this demolition, 28-5. So the differential was 55-8 in the 3 games. The -47 differential is the worst in modern history. This hasn't happened in Major League Baseball since 1894 for 3 games. So that's just some background in terms of just the extent to which Toronto and Boston made history on Friday night. So Michael, what did you think of that game?
When I saw the score, I thought I was living in a dream or something. I was living. I thought I was living in a world that you play by like Madden or MLB, the show, and it's unbelievable. What the Blue Jays did was like making a statement that we're not going to be getting pushed on by New York. This was a statement game, and it was a punishing, clobbering affair by the Blue Jays. I felt bad for the Red Sox. I got to that point when it was in the fifth inning, and I told my aunt this, and she was like, she is like, couldn't believe that it was happening. Because I was out with my aunt with the family friends get together, and we were listening. Well, I should say we were checking from time to time what the scores. But by the time we came home that I checked the score. It was 28-5, and it was at 25-2 or something, 25-3 actually after 5 innings. It was like, was that a typo or something? Like, it was unbelievable how Toronto was orchestrating. But this is the kind of offense that Toronto will have to produce every single night. I'm not saying over 20 runs per game. We're saying a real productive amount of hits and a lot of runs scored. Because if they want to catch up against the New York Yankees of all teams in the AL East, they got to put on a really good showing like they did in that game. And the pitching, I think they got to fine tune a little bit, especially the starting rotation, which has been derailed with injuries during the season thus far. And the bullpen has held it pretty good. Romano was outstanding. He got an All-Star nomination, I believe, for his work, because he's around the league leaders and saves in the American League. But just to see the Toronto Blue Jays clobbering the Boston Red Sox like that was like out of this world. I never expected that was going to be that punishing. But it was fulfilling to see the Blue Jays realizing their offensive potential, and they did eventually sweep. They did eventually sweep, albeit in a very better contested ball games and closer ball games. But it's just going to show you how good and how lethal Toronto Blue Jays can be.
I don't follow baseball as much as I used to growing up. I've talked about my love of baseball. I played a form of baseball, fastball, for many years as a kid. But you don't see that kind of beatdown every day. And particularly like in a situation where you have over 20 runs against another team. One of the last games I watched with my dad before he passed away, your grandfather, was in 1989, June 4th of 1989, in fact. And in that game, again in Fenway, the Jays were losing 10-0 in the 6th inning. And they came back to win 13-11. It was one of the most remarkable comebacks I've ever seen. And it's stuck to me to this day because it was the last game I believe I actually was sitting with my father watching on television. And, it's something that, we talk about baseball being a game, and this kind of ties in with our earlier discussion about wrestling. You have an older fan base today watching baseball if you compare it to football or basketball or even hockey. In general, the overall demographic for the baseball fandom is again boomer age, people of my age largely, and so you see games that are 3 hours, 4 hours, not infrequently. And the fact was that the game was not, it was not a marathon in terms of actual time, but it just had that relentless beatdown that you would, if it was a boxing match, somebody would have thrown the towel in to stop it, because it was just an absolute destruction. It's one of those, crazy slaughters that I've seen in quite a while. But what do you think is the realistic possibility for Toronto to make the playoffs? I understand that the Yankees have a sizable lead. What is it right now?
Right now they're in contention for a wild card spot. I don't have the standings with me.
Like it's 8 games, 9 games, something like that. It's huge, right?
Yeah, like for the division lead. It's not like 1984 Detroit Tigers, but
right.
This is pretty much like 98, 99 New York Yankees. I just think the Yankees are a really good team. They are in a really comfortable position to win the AL East. But as of right now, the trade deadline's coming up on Tuesday next Tuesday, and the Blue Jays need to make a move. I think they gotta get added at a startup to the rotation, because you can't go ways of how they performed in the first half of the season like they did in the starting rotation. They lost Ryu to a season-ending injury and potentially ending his career, because he's at the age that he can't pitch as effective as he once was. And there has been some inconsistency in the back end of the rotation with Yesi Kikuchi, who, apologies for the mispronunciation, but he has had a very roller coaster first half. It's just, and Manoah has been great. Sterling has been good as well, and I think Guzman and Barrios had their troubles, but they have been consistently good. But they need to get a starting pitcher, maybe some bullpen depth, perhaps. But I think they got enough. They got enough offense to jettison to a playoff spot. I think it's going to be like the first wild card spot, or the second wild card spot.
Are there
Toronto's,
three?
Pardon?
Are there 3 wild card spots?
2 wild card spots.
Okay,
Yeah,
because in the past they had 2 wild card qualifiers, right? I thought they added a third one. Is that?
We may have to double check for next time or something, but
yeah, because I think
right.
what it is that they added an extra wild card play-in.
Yeah.
So you have the second and third team play, and then subsequently you have the first and winner of the first wild card play.
Yeah.
Because that's historically been one of the arguments about the playoff system, is that teams can't qualify very easily in the American League East because of the dominance of Yankees and Boston historically. So I think that's the situation. There is an additional spot this year, and that's one of the reasons why people figure that Toronto is going to be able to get in for sure. It's because, you know, they have the ability to earn that. So okay, so let's stop there for today. I really appreciate your time, Michael, as always.
Thank you for having me.
And for you that have listened and caught our takes on these and other issues, if you like what you're hearing, please like and subscribe to the channel. We'll have additional episodes in the future. And we hope to hear from you again. Put in your comments about what you saw today and what you would like us to cover in future episodes. Until next time, take care.